Bayern Munich just demolished Atalanta in the Champions League and are basically already through to the next round. But this game exposed a big defensive problem that we're seeing more and more in football right now. In this game, every time Bayern attacked, their players would rotate all over the pitch. For example, in this move, their two most advanced players are the left back and the right winger. But the real problem is what happens when your entire defensive system is built around following opponents everywhere. Because in this situation, Atalanta end up defending with their right winger and left back. Against one of the most devastating attacks in Europe, that's a huge problem. And it's something Bayern were exploiting all night, with Atalanta often ending up with their two centre-backs being the most advanced players on the pitch. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at why this was the wrong choice for Palladino, how Bayern knew exactly how to exploit it, and what Atalanta could have potentially done differently. I say potentially because Atalanta probably would have had to have played the game of their life to get anything out of this fixture, and I think few people realistically expected them to go through against Bayern. But the scoreline is so devastating that something clearly went wrong for Atalanta. So let's break it down. The first thing to understand is just how difficult it is to play against this Bayern Munich team. By looking at their heat maps on FotMob, we can see just how much the Bayern players move. The wingers are rarely just out wide. The holding midfielders basically covered all of midfield, and Jackson and Gnabry were linking play all over the pitch. In the final third, they might end up looking something like this, with the fullback in attack and the wingers centrally, but it all starts from a deeper position. From their 4-2-3-1, there are some basic structural principles they follow. Firstly, the players responsible with building the attack are the two centre-backs and the two holding midfielders. These two players will usually drop into pockets of space either side of the centre-backs, mostly with Kimmich on the right and Pavlovic on the left. This instantly frees the fullbacks to be more advanced. So if we're on the left flank, Lima will push forward. Once he's here, him and Luis Diaz alternate which player drifts inside and which player hugs the touchline. We can see that in this move here, with Pavlovic forming a back three and Lima all the way in attack. On the right, you have a similar principle. Once they've created the back three, it frees the right fullback to push forward. And when they get into this position, it frees huge gaps in midfield where Jackson and Gnabry have space to come and receive the ball. Just look, for example, in this move how much Gnabry drops to come and get the ball from the centre-backs. In this split second, Bayern Munich's right back is hugging the touchline and the right winger is in the centre of the pitch. So on paper, these rotations might even seem quite easy to understand. But now let's add in the Atalanta players, so we can see how quickly this can disrupt a defensive system. In this game, Palladino chose to play in a 4-4-2 rather than the typical 3-4-2-1 they've used this season. And this was a clear choice that should make it easier to pair up man for man. The two strikers are on the two centre-backs. The wingers are on the fullbacks, the midfielders on Bayern's holding midfielders, and the back four on Bayern's most advanced players. It seems pretty straightforward, but let's start rotating like Bayern did in this game. They pass it around the back and Gnabry drops all the way towards the centre-backs to give them an option. So Kolasinac follows him all the way up here. Because they have support in the centre, this allows Pavlovic to move out wide to form a back three, dragging Derun with him and freeing up a gap in midfield. So Lima pushes forward into this gap, meaning the right winger Sulemana has to follow this run and track back. Bayern move it forward and Jackson drops deep to give an option, so Analyse has space to push forward more centrally. And now all of a sudden you end up with this situation we saw at the start of the video. With just a few rotations, you're now defending with your centre-backs completely out of position. If it was just these few moments, then maybe it wouldn't have been so bad for Atalanta. But Bayern did this everywhere. Take a look at this clip here. This is the attacking midfielder Gnabry, followed by the centre-back Kolasinac. These are the two holding midfielders, the centre-backs and the striker Jackson, followed by the other Atalanta centre-back. From a seemingly neutral attacking position, your two most important defenders are now your two most advanced players on the pitch. A few minutes after this, Bayern made it 2-0 thanks to a brilliant finish from Analyse. But even this move shows us how quickly a man-marking system against all these rotations can go wrong. Because from the long ball, Upamecano wins the duel with Scamacca. And now, simply because one player beat their direct defender, Atalanta are in a numerical disadvantage, defending with 5 players against 6 Bayern attackers. In this game, Bayern just found it too easy to break forward through the middle. By looking at the stats on FotMob, we can see just how many shots they took from dangerous areas, with a total XG of 4.84 and 8 big chances. I encourage you to take a look at the stats yourself to see just how dominant they were in this game, and you can do it completely for free on the FOTMob app. FOTMob is my go-to app for keeping up to date with the Champions League and all leagues across the world, and I just love some of the features they've recently added, like the player heat maps. So if you want to get started, you can do it completely for free by using my link in the description or pinned comment down below. Now, I feel like before we go any further, I need to make it clear that this is not meant to be a hit piece on man marking, and it's a defensive system that I personally love if done correctly. However, there's a very important detail that Atalanta missed and is one of the reasons why it just didn't work against Bayern, and that is the press on the ball carrier. Bayern are obviously a phenomenal team this season, but generally speaking, the biggest weakness for teams that play like Bayern Munich with a lot of fluid rotations is a very aggressive press on the player in possession. Because if you can stop this player from making the right pass or rush them into a long ball, then you can more easily regain possession. In fact, this is exactly what Bayern Munich were doing all night against Atalanta. Bayern also used a man-marking system and followed the players all over the pitch. However, the biggest difference was that any pass was instantly closed down. They would rush forward extremely quickly, cover passing lanes, and any player receiving the ball was instantly under pressure. Atalanta just weren't able to get this close to Bayern. The front line was never quick enough to force a rushed pass, and once they broke into midfield, then the individual quality of the attackers becomes a massive problem. Take for example the goal that made it 3-0. It comes from an outstanding first touch from Analyse, who plays Gnabry in behind, who started his run from midfield and left the centre-back Kolasinac chasing his shadow. But if we rewind to this long ball, here is where I think Atalanta need to be more aggressive. If you're going to press the keeper, you need to do it quickly so he doesn't have time to pick out a perfect pass. If Scamacca is just 1 meter closer, then Urbik wouldn't have had nearly as much time to find the right pass, and he might kick it out of play or at least make it slightly less precise. Obviously, this is a massive hypothetical, but this was the pattern for the whole game. So with all this being said, is there actually anything Palladino could have done differently last night to at least make the game a bit more even? The realistic answer is probably not. Bayern Munich were unplayable last night. But tactically speaking, I think some slight tweaks could have helped. Personally, I think going man for man against these players was a mistake. The 4 Atalanta defenders are nowhere near as quick as any of Luis Diaz, Gnabry, Jackson or Elise. So you're putting them at a huge disadvantage by making them follow these runs. By going man for man, you're also exposing yourself to artificial transitions, with lots of space in midfield to then run at the defense. So, as boring as it may sound, I think a more compact mid-block might have worked better. You keep to the same 4-4-2 shape, but stay tight between midfield and defense. And if Jackson and Gnabry want to move all over to get on the ball, then let them. Ensure play has to go out wide and not through the middle. And when the ball does go to Elise or Luis Diaz, you have players ready in support to double up and not make it so easy to cut inside. Obviously, this is just my opinion, and if Atalanta did this, they might have conceded 10 goals instead. Regardless of this, I personally think Palladino is a great manager, and Atalanta are a fun team to watch. And I do respect the fact that he tried to go toe-to-toe with Bayern Munich, and I don't think many managers would have survived that game. But I'm curious to know your thoughts as well. What do you think Atalanta could have done differently? And ultimately, do you think Bayern Munich can go all the way this year in the Champions League? If you like this video, I recently made a video on a small Dutch team that is playing some of the most ridiculous attacking football in Europe right now. So if you want, you can check it out with this link right here. Thanks for watching.